The story of the Reich's gold did not begin with secret tunnels or alpine legends, but with systematic theft carried out in plain sight after Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, when the Nazi leadership quickly understood that ideology alone could not fuel rearmament or future war, and that gold, portable, universal, untraceable, would be the foundation of Germany's ambitions. At first, the regime turned inward, confiscating assets from political enemies, trade unions, and especially Jewish citizens whose bank accounts were frozen, safety deposit boxes opened, and valuables seized under layers of legalized robbery, all carefully recorded and transferred to the Reichsbank, where its president, Jalmar Schacht, created accounting methods that allowed looted gold, silver, foreign currency, and jewelry to be reclassified as legitimate state reserves. This internal plunder escalated dramatically after the Anschluss of Austria in March 1938, when German forces entered Vienna and within hours seized the Austrian National Bank's gold reserves, nearly 100 metric tons, along with foreign currency holdings, a move that demonstrated to the world that Nazi expansion meant immediate financial annihilation for occupied states. And it worked again in Czechoslovakia in 1939. When German officials coerced the Bank for International Settlements to transfer Czech gold held in London to Reich-controlled accounts, a transaction that shocked British officials but was legally executed before war was formally declared. Once the Second World War began, the plunder expanded across Europe on an industrial scale, as Nazi forces systematically emptied the central banks of Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Yugoslavia, Greece, and later Hungary, Romania, and Italy, stripping entire nations of their monetary foundations, while simultaneously looting private wealth through occupation policies that targeted civilians, businesses, and especially deported Jews, whose gold teeth, wedding rings, watches, and personal valuables were collected in concentration camps, melted down, and converted into standardized bullion stamped with Reichsbank markings, erasing their origins. By 1942, much of this gold was stored in Berlin, but Allied bombing forced the Nazis to disperse their reserves, leading to a vast relocation effort in which gold, currency, and valuables were transported by rail and truck to mines, tunnels, castles, and salt caverns across Germany and Austria, places chosen for their natural protection, secrecy, and stability, including locations like Merkers, Altausee, and numerous lesser-known sites that remain debated today. As the war turned against Germany after Stalingrad, the gold took on a new role, not just as reserve wealth, but as a bargaining chip used to pay neutral countries such as Switzerland, Sweden, Spain, and Portugal for critical materials like tungsten, ball bearings, and fuel, transactions that often passed through Swiss banks, where looted gold was knowingly accepted, melted down, and reissued, laundering its origins and embedding Nazi theft into the post-war financial system. By late 1944, with Allied armies closing in from west and east, the Nazi leadership became increasingly paranoid about the fate of its stolen wealth, issuing orders to move gold deeper into the Alps, sometimes under SS supervision, sometimes under local party officials acting independently, creating confusion, overlapping inventories, and, in some cases, opportunities for theft, disappearance, and concealment, which is where legend begins to blend with fact, because while Allied forces would later recover enormous quantities of Nazi gold, most famously at the Merkers salt mine, where U.S. troops discovered billions of dollars worth of bullion, currency, and art in April 1945, records indicate that not all shipments arrived at their destinations, not all inventories matched, and not all transfers were accounted for, leaving historians with clear evidence that significant amounts of Reich gold vanished in the final months of the war, whether buried, hidden, stolen, destroyed, or quietly absorbed into post-war economies under new identities. As Germany collapsed in early 1945, the movement of Reich gold became increasingly chaotic and desperate, driven less by centralized planning and more by fragmented orders issued by SS leaders, regional Nazi officials, and bank administrators who understood that the war was lost and were now thinking about survival, leverage, or escape. In January and February, as Soviet forces advanced through Poland and into eastern Germany, convoys carrying gold, currency, and valuables were rerouted south into Bavaria and Austria, often under extreme secrecy, sometimes disguised as evacuation transports, sometimes guarded by SS units whose commanders kept separate, handwritten inventories that never reached Berlin. One of the largest concentrations of this wealth was moved into the salt mines of Altaussee in Austria, where not only gold but also thousands of stolen artworks were hidden, and where Hitler personally ordered the complex destroyed if capture was imminent, an order that was ultimately disobeyed by local officials who feared obliterating the mine and the town above it. Elsewhere, however, destruction did occur, as bridges were blown, trains were sabotaged, and documents burned, ensuring that the paper trail of the Reich's final gold movements would be permanently incomplete. Allied intelligence units, particularly the U.S. Treasury's monetary gold teams and the OSS Art Looting Investigation Unit, followed these trails as closely as possible, uncovering massive hoards such as the Merkers salt mine in April 1945, where American troops discovered over 100 tons of gold bullion, sacks of foreign currency, and countless personal valuables stolen from across Europe. Yet even this spectacular recovery immediately raised troubling questions, because Reichsbank records suggested that additional shipments, some confirmed by eyewitness testimony, were never found. In the chaotic final weeks, SS officers overseeing gold transports sometimes diverted cargo, bearing crates in forests, sinking them in lakes, or hiding them in abandoned tunnels, either on orders from above or as personal insurance policies for a post-war underground life, and in several documented cases, guards and drivers later admitted under interrogation that they did not know where final destinations were, only that they were instructed to unload at remote sites and destroy transport records. After the war, international efforts to recover Nazi gold faced political and moral obstacles, as neutral countries, most notably Switzerland, were found to have accepted looted gold in exchange for wartime trade, and while some restitution was made under Allied pressure, investigations revealed that melted and reissued gold bars could no longer be traced to their victims, meaning that vast amounts of stolen wealth were effectively legalized and absorbed into the global financial system. By the late 1940s, Allied commissions concluded that while the majority of identifiable Reich gold had been recovered or accounted for, a significant portion, estimates range from tens to hundreds of millions of dollars in 1945 value, remained missing, fueling decades of speculation, treasure hunts, and conspiracy theories, some grounded in partial evidence, others in myth, but all rooted in a single undeniable truth. The Third Reich stole on a scale unprecedented in modern history, and in its final collapse, it lost control of its own plunder, scattering fragments of that wealth across Europe in ways that no post-war investigation has ever fully untangled. As the immediate post-war years unfolded, the mystery of the missing Reich gold shifted from the battlefield to courtrooms, intelligence files, and diplomatic negotiations, where investigators quickly discovered that recovering stolen wealth was far more difficult than defeating the regime that had stolen it, because gold had no memory and those who knew its final movements were often dead, disappeared, or protected by the emerging realities of the Cold War. Allied investigators interrogated former Reichsbank officials, SS officers, transport drivers, and camp administrators, piecing together fragmented accounts that confirmed some shipments had been deliberately concealed in the final weeks of the war, not as part of a single grand plan, but through dozens of localized decisions made by men who believed hidden gold could buy freedom, influence, or survival in a defeated Germany. And in several cases, testimony revealed that SS units were ordered to move crates of bullion and valuables into mountainous or forested areas without precise coordinates, unload them, and then execute civilian laborers who had helped, ensuring no witnesses remained. At the same time, the geopolitical landscape was changing rapidly, and by 1947 the focus of the United States and its allies had shifted from denazification to containment of the Soviet Union, meaning that aggressive pursuit of financial justice often gave way to political expediency, particularly when it involved neutral countries whose cooperation was now considered strategically important, and nowhere was this more evident than in Switzerland, where wartime banking secrecy had allowed Nazi gold to be accepted, melted, and reissued as clean bullion, making restitution nearly impossible, since melted bars erased serial numbers and original markings that could have linked them to looted central banks or murdered victims. Despite international agreements and partial repayments, later investigations by the World Jewish Congress and independent historians concluded that billions in today's dollars were never returned to their rightful owners, not because they could not be found, but because they could no longer be distinguished from legitimate reserves. Meanwhile, rumors of hidden Nazi treasure took on a life of their own, fueled by genuine gaps in documentation, with reports emerging from Austria, southern Germany, Poland, and even the Czech countryside of buried crates, submerged trucks, or sealed tunnels, some supported by wartime maps or eyewitness accounts, others by nothing more than hearsay, yet a small number of discoveries kept the legends alive, such as post-war finds of gold coins, Reichsbank containers, and personal valuables uncovered during construction projects or by accident, each discovery reinforcing the uncomfortable reality that not all of the Reich's stolen wealth had been recovered. Historians today agree on several key points that strip away much of the myth while preserving the truth at the core of the story. There was no single ultimate Nazi treasure cache, no master vault waiting to be discovered, but rather a fragmented legacy of theft, concealment, and loss, spread across hundreds of locations and transactions, some permanently erased by destruction, some absorbed into financial systems, and some possibly still hidden, forgotten by those who buried them and indistinguishable from the landscape above. What remains beyond dispute is that the gold of the Third Reich was not merely a material asset but a weapon used to fund war, prolong suffering, manipulate neutral states, and strip entire populations of their future, and that its incomplete recovery represents one of the enduring moral failures of the post-war world, where justice for victims was often sacrificed for stability, secrecy, and convenience, leaving behind a story that is not just about missing treasure, but about how modern systems can launder crimes so thoroughly that even history struggles to reclaim what was stolen. As decades passed and witnesses died, the question of the Reich's missing gold became less a matter of recovery and more a matter of historical reckoning, because by the late 20th and early 21st centuries it was clear that no dramatic final discovery would resolve the story, only a gradual acknowledgement of how thoroughly the gold had been dispersed, transformed, and morally obscured. Declassified intelligence files from the United States, Britain, and Switzerland revealed that post-war investigations repeatedly ran into the same dead end, where gold that could be physically located had already been melted down, re-stamped, or exchanged, and gold that could be traced on paper no longer existed in its original form, leaving historians to reconstruct events from shipping manifests, partial bank ledgers, and testimony extracted under oath decades after the fact. Commissions in the 1990s revisited Switzerland's wartime role and confirmed that Nazi gold had entered neutral financial systems knowingly, while similar inquiries showed that smaller quantities passed through Sweden, Spain, Portugal, and even South America, often as payment for raw materials, escape routes, or political favors, meaning that fragments of the Reich's stolen wealth were embedded across the global economy long after the Third Reich itself had ceased to exist. By this point, the narrative shifted decisively away from treasure hunting and toward accountability, as researchers emphasized that the real tragedy of Nazi gold was not that some of it might still lie buried in forests or lakes, but that much of it was irretrievably disconnected from the people it had been stolen from, millions of victims whose property had been stripped, melted, and anonymized, turning personal loss into abstract bullion. Modern historians therefore draw a clear line between myth and reality. There is no lost mountain vault waiting to be opened, no final convoy hidden intact, But there is overwhelming evidence of systematic plunder, partial recovery, deliberate laundering, and permanent loss, making the story of Reich gold one of the clearest examples of how mass crime can outlive the criminals themselves through institutions that prioritize stability over justice. In the end, the gold of the Third Reich did not vanish in a single dramatic moment, but dissolved slowly into the post-war world, scattered through banks, vaults, and economies, its origins forgotten or ignored, while its victims were left with memories, names, and histories that had to fight to be remembered at all. And that is why the true legacy of Nazi gold is not buried treasure, but an enduring warning about how easily wealth, power, and bureaucracy can combine to erase accountability on a continental scale. This story was brought to you by World War Lab.